All right, Rosie, I got something to admit to you on today's show. This is going to
Mm,
be painful, but I'm going to try my best.
Here we go.
I'm a fraud. I'm an absolute fraud for believing in the Toronto Maple Leafs. That is pretty much my feel on this Wednesday. I'm a fraud. How are you today?
It was different of you to really just hammer down saying, "I guarantee they're going to win. They're going into Edmonton, 10-game heater," and you pick up on them. I liked the positivity, but it kind
Yeah.
of blew up in your face, didn't it?
It did blow up in my face, and we're going to get to that game, the entirety of it, the dissection, the breakdown, and everything coming up, presented by Betano. It's the Wednesday edition of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with you. Don't mind the alarm buzzing. That's what happens when you work from home. They're doing some alarm testing in my building, so bear with us on that front. But nevertheless, we have Matt Stajan, one of your former teammates, coming up in about 30 minutes' time as well. That should be a lot of fun to rekindle and hash back and look back at his era. I thought it was unique as well. Looking through his hockey DB, he was part of the pre-cap era and the post-cap era. And I'm curious to ask a player who's dealt with both eras, what that transition period was really like.
Yeah, totally. It was a big change in the game. I don't think people realized it at the time, but it really changed things. And doing this kind of thing we do today and breaking down, rosters and trades and cap compliancy, it makes it pretty crazy to think about going back to where it was just the Wild West. You can do whatever the hell you want, and why the rich teams didn't win every single year is kind of the craziest part of it. So we could definitely break that down with him.
At the Leafs Nation 401, where you could subscribe here on YouTube. We're on fire for the wrong reasons because this team is not on fire. But at the Leafs Nation 401, if you'd like to chime in, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review wherever you find your podcast. Just search Leafs Morning Take. A 5-star review would be fantastic. Leave a comment as well. Pump us up. We're bringing out the big dogs the last couple weeks to get this channel going a bit again at the Leafs Nation 401. Brought to you by DoorDash. It's time for the appetizer. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off, up to $10 in value, and zero delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and enter code NATION25. That's code NATION25, uppercase. 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Offer valid in Canada. Subject to change. Terms apply. So, Rosie, we got a lot. We got a lot to get into. First and foremost, what was your general assessment of that hockey game, a 4-2 win for the Oilers against the Maple Leafs?
It wasn't too much different than the three before that. They come out hot and do the right things. It looks like they're prepared. Come out and get a big win, and then rest on their laurels and just take their foot off the pedal. Let them come at them. Start to get scrambly. Just absolutely abandon ship with whatever their their process was and their game plan was. They abandoned the system, they abandoned the game plan, they abandoned the effort, especially in the D zone. And when you're playing teams in the NHL, they're going to take advantage of that. They're going to sniff that out. They're going to put the hammer down, put you on your heels, and shove it right back up to you. And that's what happened yesterday. It was, I mean, you'd think you'd learn your lesson, right? Like mentally, it's a mental thing. Like you go in there, Austin Matthews scores the first 30 seconds, perfect start. Everyone's jacked up. And then I know I've been a part of it where you're like, oh baby, it's our night tonight. And then all of a sudden you start to think down the road and think other things and start to feel like it's going to be an easy night. And that's something that happens to every team. But when it's happened to you four times in a row, I mean, something's got to give here. Like there's got to be some fingers pointed and some adjustments made because it's just so unacceptable. It's not good hockey. It's not a good hockey team that does that. It's really the opposite. And it is frustrating, very Leafy, because they are good enough to go out there and get that lead every night lately, and not good enough to hold on to it.
Man, I felt like I was watching an alternate feed because the breakdown on the broadcast, and understandably so, is like the Leafs got them where they want. Like, am I the only one who felt it was men against boys in that game? Like, first and foremost, shout out to the crowd in Edmonton. That had that playoff feel, that intensity, the passion. But I just think one team was way better than the other. And I think if it weren't for Martin Jones in the first half of that hockey game, I don't think it's close. But you're so right. I had that feeling 20 seconds in. That's why I predicted a Maple Leafs victory. They were buzzing. What a goal. Marner to Matthews. It's 1-0. And then after that, I thought like it was an uphill battle all night. Like the Leafs just had nothing. And granted, the Oilers are playing exceptional right now. I don't think the other team ever gets the credit it deserves for the way they play against the Maple Leafs. But I thought Edmonton was great. I thought McDavid looked so motivated, more than usual. I thought he was tremendous. But for me, I think it just compounded the issues with this hockey team right now. Defensively, they have a third string netminder in there. Like Rosie, I don't know about you. Like I have no fucking clue how that shot by Draisaitl went in. Like that is a buzz killer. You've been on a team where a goalie lets that goal in and it just deflates. And unfortunately, the Leafs are such a fragile team. You surrender a goal like that. I saw that happen. I'm like, they're in trouble here.
Yeah, it was an odd one. I mean, and it sucks because Marty Jones is playing so good, and he looked very poised. I tweeted that he's going to get time in the
I
playoffs
saw
this
that.
year,
You're horny.
and
Yeah.
he just looks like as good as you can look at times where they're putting the hammer down. You've got the offensive power of the Edmonton Oilers. He didn't look frazzled. He didn't look scrambly. He looked square. He looked poised, and he kept them in that game. No doubt, they get a 2-0 lead. And yeah, that was such an odd one. I mean, Dreisaitl's kind of making a move. Yeah, he's off on the side, but he loves being over there on that right side and just kind of like throws a little muffin backhander in. And I think he must have just lost his post, must have lost his positioning, thought he was on the spot and just flips it in. That was very odd, but yeah, a big time deflator. I would have to agree. But like you said, credit to the Edmonton Oilers because when they got down two, they didn't seem to go on their heels at all. They really didn't. They seemed to still have the jam. You could see it. It was it was palpable. You could see the way they were still snarling and putting the hammer down and attacking, led by Connor McDavid. You saw Hyman in there just giving her as well. And they didn't seem to think the game was over. And just from a mental standpoint, they seemed to have a lot of belief and confidence in themselves. And that paid off because they come back and they win the game. And I just don't see the Leafs doing those kinds of things. They seem to do the opposite a lot of the time, whether they have the lead or they're trailing. It's always the negative that it seems to be in their minds during those situations, and it's bit them so many times. It's getting embarrassing.
And again, my apologies for the beeping. That is the panic button for the Maple Leafs that I keep pressing, by the way. But no, they're doing alarm testing in my building. It's beyond my control. And naturally, it has to happen right at 11 a.m. Eastern time as we do this show. But I think that's accurate, Rosie. I think you look at this Maple Leafs team and watching the game last night, two things stood out. I talked about the Draisaitl goal. The other one is like, I understand it's the Leafs. I understand they blow leads, but like Tyler Bertuzzi, like that post in the first 3 minutes where they were buzzing and that was an exceptional pass. And it's like, fuck, man, just bury that. Like, just bury one of those. Like, it seems like Bertuzzi's been fighting it all season long for some reason. Like, you watch the way he played with Boston last year and you get excited. You're like, holy shit, this guy's going to be a difference maker. Comes to the Leafs and every player comes to this team and they just don't perform as we expect. Naturally, again, halfway through this year, but like there's been so many instances like that where it's like a tap in for Bertuzzi, he can't get the job done. And it's the margin for error is razor thin, as you know, having played in this league, excuse me, and especially and specifically when you're playing a team as red hot as the Oilers are, where they've won 10 in a row going into last night's game. You have to bury on plays like that, and I think everything's under the microscope in a hockey game like that, and that's one of the things I'll remember is like the missed goal there from Tyler Bertuzzi.
Yeah, that was a tough one just to hit the post dead on. And then it looked like he had perfect opportunity to get a second whack at it with an empty net and just couldn't quite get it. I think he was falling. But, things like that happen. You got to keep going. I mean, when you're getting the chances and they're not going in and you're getting, a couple bad breaks like that, you just got to know that things are happening for you. You got to keep the hammer down and get your chances. And you got to understand that they'll come. But it just wasn't enough there. I think Edmonton kind of jumped up their play and kind of met them in the middle, and then we had kind of a lull there in the middle of the game where everyone's kind of not wanting to give too much up and not a lot of chances were given. But you talk about Bertuzzi, and yeah, I just look at his face and his facial expressions and body language, and he kind of seems to be, I don't want to say miserable, but just like he doesn't have that swagger that he's had in the past. He doesn't have that happy-go-lucky confidence that he's had in the past. He's got it's not frustration. It's just you look at him and he's just kind of blah. He's just kind of bland. Like he's not thrilled about where he is, but what's going on. And you can see it on his face, and his play kind of dictates that too. He has flashes where he's solid, but I think we did all expect something a little bit different, a little more swagger, a little more confidence out of this guy, which would lead to production. And it hasn't quite been that way so far this year.
The one thing I could think about last night too is like the blame game. Like I understand we're 42 games into this season, but like who deserves the most of the blame? Because it's like a civil war on social media right now. There's people blaming Dubas, Tree Living, Shanahan, Keefe. I mean, Keefe's getting a ton of heat right now. A lot of people calling for his head. The players. If you could make a sort of blame pie, who gets the brunt of the blame, Rosie?
Well, ultimately, it's the players that are playing out there. That's understood. It's on them to perform at the highest level that they're capable of together. And then, but to me, it's the coach that needs to bring all those individuals together and have them playing on the same page. And I'm starting to look at Keefe and say, it doesn't look like you're changing the right things. It doesn't look like you're seeing the same things as everybody else. To continually have these type of performances where you're close but no cigar, you start off with the lead and you have control of the game and you absolutely just give it away. I mean, 5 unanswered goals, 4 unanswered goals. Like, what is that, man? It's it's a systematic thing, it's a mindset thing, and to me that is on the coach to make sure every day that those guys aren't slipping up, that they understand what the process is, what the goal is, what they have to do to accomplish it. And when I listen to everybody's interviews, when I look at their body language, I'm just like, these guys aren't seeming to be on the same page as the fan base. I mean, Mitch Marner's interview after was just pathetic. I understand staying positive and not wanting the negativity to creep into you and to infiltrate the locker room, because there's nothing worse than that. And I'm all about that. I understand it, but Mitch Marner's interviews are so cringy to the fact where it's like you're not saying anything. Either you're not saying anything true or you're completely out to lunch. I mean, you just did that. That's got to be the most devastating. That was the biggest game of the year in my mind, the one that I think everyone was dialed into, major measuring stick game. And then to have it end in the exact same way that you've been struggling, with a blown lead, and then to have him say we're playing really great hockey and just a couple of bounces. I mean, that's not the story of the game to me. The story of the game was coming out hot, having the lead, having control of the game, and being able to seize that and adjust to protecting that and doing the right things to continue having that lead. And they just abandoned ship and completely gave the game away with 4 unanswered goals. Could have been 5-2 with the offside. I mean, whether that was offside or not, they still broke down and allowed a goal, right? So it's just frustrating, man. And I'm starting to really look at Keefe and say, I just don't, I don't think this guy's capable or in the mindset to turn this ship around, because it doesn't seem to be making any of the changes that are necessary. I mean, over the last several years. So you look at the Edmonton Oilers and the way they didn't want to fire Jay Woodcroft. Everyone liked him. He was a solid guy and people wanted to play for him. He was a player's coach, but inevitably the writing was on the wall. They unload him and look what happens. I mean, a huge change like that in the mindset and the culture of a locker room can do wonders. And if you want to salvage this season, I would be totally okay with them unloading Keefe. Thanks for your services, but it's just not working with this group the way you're doing it. We got to switch to something else.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Like that's been the pushback on social media, because after the game, I just tweeted out it's time for a coaching change. And I really do feel that way. And I felt that way for a couple weeks. But the backlash was like, okay, well, look at Ottawa, look at St. Louis, look at Minnesota. Like the Wild, they throw out of that equation. They're so injured right now. Kaprizov's back, Gustafson's back, and they're going to start cooking, I think, big time. But I think you look specifically at an Edmonton team. Like, what was the issue with that team? When they made the coaching change, they couldn't play defense. They had no structure. And now look what's changed with this team, right?
Yeah, I'd agree. It's just a change in mentality. And I mean, I've had coaching changes before, and I mean, everyone does a reset. It's just inevitable, right? You're in that locker room. Okay, first meeting with this guy. We're all going to sit down and talk about what's been going on, what's been changed, what direction we want to go to, what this coach's vision is, where he sees the breakdowns, what he thinks the positives are and the strengths of the team, and we believe in this team and it's going to take a couple of different adjustments, but here's where you're going wrong and here's what we're going to change. And then everyone's like, okay, like a new look. And then you go out there for practice. It's a completely different practice, right? Like sometimes a coach that you've had for a while, practices become so mundane. You're just kind of going through the motions out there. That all gets changed. Maybe a guy cracks the whip a little bit and, demands more accountability out of the players. Like everything changes, and that can easily translate to the games. And I think, yeah, different. It doesn't work every time. It's not a guarantee. It's got to be the right fit and the right players. And honestly, everyone in the league is searching for that. It's not a science that's perfect that you can just predict, but you look at what's going on right now with the way they're playing and the way they're playing, it's Jekyll and Hyde, man. They can play so well and then play so god awful. And it seems like lately it's the latter. You play just bad enough to lose. And I mean, defensively, ah, it's not good enough, man. They're not going anywhere this year the way it is. I mean, we're talking about making the fucking playoffs right now, where 3 months ago we're talking about winning the Stanley Cup. You can't fall that hard. You can't show that many warts and just expect them not to be real, because they are.
Ultimately, it takes me back to like what Bruce Boudreau said on Tuesday, where it's like I think people are delusional in the fact that the Leafs are just not a good team. They're an average team. Like I don't view them as an elite team anymore. I thought that was a game against a superior opponent, and it was men against boys. Like that was my view on it. I didn't think the Leafs were even in the same arena as the Oilers on Tuesday night.
Well, for certain parts of it, they were. But what bothers me is, in the breakouts, for example, you got a defenseman behind the net. You know that your defensive game is your weakness and your Achilles heel. You're trying to protect a 2-goal lead. How often were the defensemen like behind the net trying to make a breakout, and you have two wingers over the red line in the neutral zone, and you have one forward back trying to help, create an outlet for these defensemen? I just don't understand how that works when your Achilles heel is your defensive zone. How can you create that much gap between yourself and the puck carrying defenseman in your zone? I understand spread out their team and their players and let them respect the fact that you're out there on the blue line as a stretch guy, but they always got two stretch guys out there. They're winging cross, you know, full ice passes up to the guy, and like those usually aren't the ones that are on the tape that you get with speed and stride. I don't feel like they're tight enough. I don't think they're playing as a unit. Considering what their weaknesses are, you'd think they'd tighten up in their D zone and come up as a 5-man unit, but they don't. They're scrambling all over the place, and inevitably, the guys are going to get sticks on those pucks. They're going to knock down plays, and then it's odd man rush city, and we can't compete with odd man rushes. We're not good enough defensively. I mean, some of those goals you score. I mean, Morgan Riley's the best defenseman on this team, and I just don't understand. I played the position, and he's standing like in the corner. While like why aren't you? It's just common. You cut the ice in half. You're either in the net front or you're off to the side, or you switch positions. And with TJ Brody, you got to wait till your guy's there and before you take off and leave the net front. They're just leaving the net front wide open. There's times where they should be in front of the net front. They're just standing off on the side looking at it. I don't understand what's going on. That's not all-star caliber defensive play. That's not Stanley Cup winning defensive play. It's just so not good enough, and I don't understand why. And every time I think about it and rack my brain, it just trickles and trickles up to the top where, they're not being held accountable. There's no consequences for their actions. They don't even seem upset when they lose. They don't seem to say the same things as the fans. They don't have the frustration and the need and the urgency to change things. It's just like, we're playing some really great hockey. Didn't quite work for us. We're going to go do the same goddamn thing tomorrow. And everyone that cares about this team is going, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, I think they play with a lot of hope. I mean, that's very accurate. It's just a team that knows they're really, really talented, but are they a team? I mean, far from it. Like this whole Nylander situation is perplexing to me, man. 4 straight outings, 20 shots on goal, and he's pointless in 4 straight outings. Like, where was this 2 weeks ago with the whole contract stalemate and conversation, right?
Well, it's pretty evident that as soon as he signed that contract, he's been, much more of a ghost. Would you not agree? On absolute fire
Yeah.
for months and months and months, signs the contract. And I understand that's a big change in his life, potentially. There's a different outlook after you sign that. But you got to be smart enough as a premier player and as a professional to say, listen, I know I got this weight off my shoulders. That was kind of the carrot dangling in front of me. I had motivation to like shove it up their ass and show how good I am and show that I'm worth what I'm asking for. Then you get it. Okay, now you got to keep that hammer down. What's your motivation now? What else is driving you? And it doesn't appear like he's done that reset. I mean, it's way too convenient of timing to sign that contract and then become, a ghost. He seems a little bit more lackadaisical. I mean, he's spinning around and doing the most obvious plays in the world and missing the net by a foot. And it's kind of like he just kind of seems like that Willie kind of that little swaggery, no big deal. He's kind of got that going again, where before he was snarling a bit more, saying like, look the fuck out, I'm coming and I'm gonna prove my worth. And now that he's proved it, I know that's our biggest fear with that contract, is that he goes into more of a lackadaisical effort and just kind of rests on his laurels. And I'm not saying he's doing that 100%, but it's certainly evident that as soon as he signed it, he's kind of not been the same player.
It's pretty amazing to me. I mean, we're a week into this extension and it's like, holy shit, they may have made a colossal mistake here. Like that's a difference of 2 million bucks maybe that he probably deserves, maybe around 9.5 million. He's getting 11.5 million. And when you're a team and a salary cap team, that could be the difference between keeping a player and not keeping a player. And then ultimately, I mean, this is going to be on the GM. It's going to be on the president, everybody involved, but he's got to get his head out of his ass, man. I see a different player in Nylander, man. Like he's just not controlling the game the way he did the first 38 games of the season. Maybe he's dealing with the pressure. I don't care. He got his money. It's time to play that way all the time. But that was the concern that you brought up before he signed this contract. John Tavares is another one. We talked about this earlier this week where I'm not that concerned. He goes through these blips throughout a season, but this is his longest drought as a Maple Leaf, 5 games without a point. And again, maybe it's tough watching him play like the likes of Connor McDavid, but it seemed like he was like 3 steps behind last night.
Yeah, you start to wonder what's going on with him. Is he banged up? Is he hurt in some way? But you just don't see him out there. I mean, I didn't see him in any dangerous areas. I didn't see him in any, odd man rushes or exposures of the other team or getting in dangerous areas. I just did not notice John Tavares out there. Um, he's fighting a little bit too, and like you said, it's his longest drought as a Maple Leaf, 5 games, which isn't the longest streak in the world by any stretch. It shows that he's been kind of pretty consistent for this team. But yeah, when it rains, it pours. I feel like everyone's kind of, and again, when it rains, it pours. You've got Martin Jones playing really good. I know we talked about that one missed goal there from Draisaitl, and it's very Leafy to play that fucking good and then
Yeah.
just to have two blunders and that's the game. And I mean, that is the NHL. Your mistakes are just, there's a spotlight on them. You pay for them every single time. I remember the biggest thing I noticed from the American League to the NHL is you pay for your mistakes. If you turn that puck over, it is going the other way so fast that your head would spin. And it's the only league in the world that has that. And with goaltenders, I imagine one mistake, you're going to pay for it. But to see Martin Jones play that well, but then also like the two little mistakes or whatever are the difference in the
Yeah.
game. It's frustrating. I feel like everyone's feeling that right now. And they're so not on the same page, man, that if I want to salvage this year and figure out how to do things better, I need a trade to be made to get some defensemen that can fill those gaps in the back end. And I'm leaning heavily towards a coaching change, man. This guy is not he's not getting the most out of them. I don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but there seems to be no accountability, no adjustments made, and it seems to be a totally scrambly, desperate decisions made when things get going bad.
I wanted you to speak to that because again, we have our thumb and our fingerprints all over social media. You got the pro Dubas crowd who have hated Brad Treliving since day one, saying, "Well, Keefe was given a lesser roster, and that's why this team sucks." And they don't want to put the blame on Keefe, and understandably so, because Dubas is Keefe's guy, and we get it. We understand how that pyramid works, so people are going to be pissed off about that, and naturally they are today. But I wanted to get sort of your opinion because I watched this team, dude. They do not play fast. And there's a way to play fast and be quick and still have the players and the personnel the Maple Leafs have. And maybe this stems from the blue line. Maybe they don't have enough guys to move the puck up because that's all I notice is how long it takes for the puck to go from the D to the forwards. And when you have the star power that the Leafs have, like they just have to move it way quicker. You watch Edmonton tick pass into the zone. Like Toronto's like this build up and this fucking winding back. Like why would you play the game that way is my question.
Well, because they're all highly skilled players and it's how they're used to playing it. And they have the talent to be able to pull it off sometimes. But clearly, it's just not sustainable, right? I mean, they get the puck and they pull up and they go wide legged and they pull it around a guy. And you're kind of dangling in a way, and your little spot passes to a guy kind of driving through. And it's fancier style of hockey. It's kind of fancy play for sure, and that's what you get when you put that much of the same on the roster and give them the reins to the entire team, right? We've talked about it before. The core four, I mean, you could say John Tavares is not quite that way, but these guys are playing a style of play that it's not playoff hockey. That's not what you do in the playoffs. You get your ass run over in the playoffs playing that way. You get away with it in the regular season. You can win some games, yeah, but even that's not even sustainable, as we're finding out right now. They never get the puck deep and just fucking chase it. Run the D man, get that loose puck, get it up to the wall, set it up, hit the middle of a guy driving the middle. It just never looks like that. It's always perimeter outside stuff. Oh, I don't like what I see. I'm going to loop back with the big old loop. And puck possession's good. That's fine. But it just seems like the way they're going about it, they're not talented enough to play that style of game. I don't think anybody is. Like, you don't really see even Drysdale and McDavid don't really play that way. They play more of a north-south game, and if they're not talented enough to do that, then nobody is. And I'm not in love with the way these guys are playing the game. Like I said, when it's time to break out of your zone and you got possession back and you want to make sure you keep it, they're stretching out in the neutral zone, man, expecting our defensemen to get them the puck cleanly, and we do not have the best D in the league. So why would that be your strategy? You just want it that bad? You're just that immune to going into your D zone and helping out? It's frustrating, man, and it's not good enough. They're not, like, if nothing changes, like, really, if the Dubasite, like, who thinks that things don't need to change here? I'd love to hear their opinion. Things
Yeah,
need to change. I mean, unless you're just happy with like this,
yeah,
no one's happy. You'd be
yeah,
insane. Apparently, the only one happy with their play is Mitch Marner right now. I'm not
yeah.
happy with their play. I don't think
Exactly.
any of the fans are. Like, something needs to drastically change, and there's a few different options on it. But staying the course is fucking insane.
People lose sight of the major league issue here. The previous administration bowed down, said, "Hey, you want 11 million bucks a year? You get it, and you get it, and you get it, and you get it." And now they started this trickle effect, and when you take money away from that, you take money away from the depth players, and that's unfortunately what's happening with this Maple Leafs team. I want to give some credit as well to Pontus Holmberg. I didn't think this guy had it in him, but he's actually looked pretty good in the top line there. And they flipped Matthews, they flipped Nylander and Marner again, eh?
Yeah, man. I don't know. You start off the game like that, well, Marner to Matthews, and that's kind of the from a certain standpoint, a score sheet standpoint, it's the best start you could possibly get. The way they started that game, 28 seconds in, they bury the first goal, and it's pretty, and it's Marner to Matthews. I've been on teams before where that happens, and the coach is going up and down saying, "Do not take your foot off the gas. This means nothing. It's still 0-0." Because when you get off to a quick start like that, it's like, "Oh baby, is it going to be one of those nights? Is it point night? Are we going to start, running the gamut with these guys? They don't have it tonight. Let's go see what we can do with this. Let's have some fun." Then it turns into looping and shooting and abandoning all systems and forgetting about defense. And, especially when you're as fragile with leads as the Maple Leafs are, you'd think they would have learned by now. Clearly they haven't. But yeah, the line's in a blender. I think he's tried every possible combination there is. Are you going to stick with anything? I mean, how do you mid game? How do you break that up like right away? You just abandon it right away. Oh, we had a couple bad shifts. Switch the lines. I mean, players fucking hate that. You can't keep anything going from shift to shift. You're making a play, you're entering the zone, and you look over and you're like, oh fuck, that's not Marner, that's Nylander, or you know what I mean? It's like they have different styles of play. You get used to a guy and you start reading off each other. How are you supposed to do that when it's blown up 3 times a game, let alone once every 3 games? It's crazy to me. And yeah, Holmberg has stepped up. He's more skilled than I thought. There was a chance there for him to bury a feed from Austin Matthews. He didn't quite finish it, but there's a couple guys that can play those guys. I mean, hell, lots of guys could go play with that skill and look pretty good, but he seems to fit in there well. But is Holmberg on the top line the answer to this fucking problem? No.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. We're going to connect here with Matt Stajan in a couple moments, but Terry Koshin on Twitter chiming in. Leafs will have select players on the ice today in Calgary. Development that comes after practice originally was canceled. Keefe to do media availability afterwards. So, for
Mm.
anybody thinking a change is coming, you are direly mistaken. And maybe we're wrong, and even thinking a change makes sense. Maybe this team is just flawed. Maybe Keefe shouldn't take the blame, but it doesn't feel like we talk about the urgency on the ice, dude. There is just chill and no urgency off the ice, it seems, with this team. I guess everything's kosher with this team.
Well, you want to hear the right things to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? You want to hear that them saying this is unacceptable, this needs to change, we need to reevaluate the way we approach a game, the way we make adjustments in game. You want to hear that accountability, and there seems to be none. I mean, Twitter. I had the flu last night. I had to go to bed, but my Twitter was just going bananas on everyone losing it, and then you look at the comments of the actual players where it should mean the most to them, and the coaching staff and everyone in the Maple Leafs organization, and they're kind of like, well, and it's like they're not even aware of the 4-game skid they're on, and the way they've lost the games, blowing leads. I mean, if you're just getting outclassed by a team and you just can't keep up, that's a different story. But when you're getting the lead and then blowing it, it's kind of it's an ugly way to go. And it just frustrates me that they don't address it, or even act like it exists.
Yeah, it really is a scary time with this team. And again, apologies to the beeps behind me. There's not much I can do here with this fucking alarm system in this building. It's driving me insane. But nevertheless, the following interview is brought to you by our friends over at Battlegrounds Axe Throwing. Unlock the ultimate birthday party, team building event, or have a great date night with your significant other. To find a location and book an outing today, go to battlegrounds.com. That's BATL grounds.com. Battlegrounds.com as we welcome in today's guest. It is none other than Matt Stajan. Stage, how's it going, buddy?
We got you, Stage. You hear us, Stage? Not yet.
All right, we're gonna try to connect with Matt. I think we're having some technical issues there. We'll get Matt Stajan on with us very shortly. But what do you remember about playing with Stage, Rosie?
Yeah, he was a leader, man. He did things the right way. Team guy. I don't think anyone's ever played with the guy that didn't enjoy playing with him and would love to play with him again. We were talking about it before, but I want to bring up his rookie year roster. It's absolutely insane. The guys that he played with and the guys that I had on that roster. Like, what a way to come into the league and get some veteran leadership. But we'll see if we can connect with him here.
Yeah, we'll try our best here. Do we got him now? Still nothing. Okay. We'll try, but yeah, no, I mean, it was quite the era of Maple Leafs hockey in general. 15 years ago or so. But the Pat Quinn era is like something when we started working together, Rosie, that's the one thing I brought up. Like that was my favorite Leafs team, and just growing up in that era was just tremendous. Like that's real hockey to me.
Seriously, and it seems like the year I'm looking at is 0304. When I think of Pat Quinn and the non-salary cap era, for some reason I go back to like 96 and that type of thing. But man, it went into the 2000s pretty deep there, and it's odd that a guy like Stage, who seems pretty current, like in the last little while there, has played in that era. And I mean, Eddie Belfour's on the team and Pat Quinn's coaching. I mean, that goes back a ways. Pretty cool. And I wish that I was more focused. I was doing my own thing, but to watch the Leafs at that time was probably pretty exciting with all those players. It was a wicked style of hockey that they played, and a pretty awesome era that I think we probably took for granted.
Producer Vic, do we have Matt yet? Stage can hear us? Oh no, we
He
can't
can
hear
hear us.
you,
We
but
can't
yeah,
hear
he can
him.
hear us. Okay, we'll get producer Vic to try to connect here with Stage off air and try to figure this out. We appreciate him being mindful of this whole situation with technology, man. Sometimes it just doesn't fucking work out, but that's the unfortunate nature of it. But I think when you look at this team, we got a bit of an update here on Joseph Woll too. Like, what'd you make of that? He's with the team, he's skating, but right now, like, he's not practicing with the team. I don't envision this guy returning anytime soon. Do you, Rosie?
I could see within 2 weeks, kind of thing like that, he starts to be in practice and being full time and kind of teeter tottering on whether he's going to play that night or not. Maybe it's longer. Like we've said before, those high ankle sprains are such a bitch. They're just I've never had one, but just I think it's the goalie skates and the style of play that the goalies have to play. Being pushing off their ankles and whatnot is pretty detrimental to a high ankle sprain, and whether it's the inside or the outside, I think makes a difference. And I mean, if he comes back tomorrow, I don't think these problems are solved. And even if he stands on his head, I don't think it's like any long term solution. Like we've said, Martin Jones has played fantastic for us, and a few blips here and there is expected. What do you want him to get a shutout every single night? But I mean, that game was up to the players to win 2-0. Martin Jones, it was standing on his head the first, I don't know, half of the game, and you just leave him out to dry, leave him out to make a mistake. And it's just too frustrating, man. I don't think the goaltending, everyone's talking about goaltending this and that. I think we have good enough goaltending to at least be playing a hell of a lot better hockey than we are right now. The onus is on the skaters right now. The defensemen need help. And it's just the most frustrating that they know that, they should know that, yet they refuse to give their defensemen any help when they know they're weak back there. And I don't know, it shows an individual kind of selfish mindset to play that kind of hockey, man, and it's biting them in the ass constantly with all these blown leads.
Do we have stage now? There you are.
Oh,
Hey, there we go. How's it going? Good, thanks. Yeah, we were just talking about the game last night. You happen to catch it? Oh, okay.
we got a new program going here, Stage, and today is an absolute nightmare. So our apologies.
Okay, we're gonna try to get him on here. Sorry, we don't have him on the screen right now, but he does hear us behind the scenes. But and again, apologies to everybody. It's one of those days with my alarm
Big time.
system and just technology, and Rosie's carrying the show as per usual. That's just what happens sometimes in the broadcast world, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I got cold sweats going on from the flu yesterday. It just seems like an absolute nightmare. Capped off by a beautiful game last night. I got lots of friends out here that are Oilers
Yeah.
fans too. And fucking my phone yesterday before the puck drop, I had people coming out from all different walks texting me about the game and this, that, and the other thing. And getting off to that hot start, I was laughing. And then 2-0, was thinking, oh boy, is that streak's in jeopardy. But I wasn't being too cocky because I know the culture of this team. And lo and behold, my phone, I went to bed, like I said, my phone was just popping off with people chirping me. It's embarrassing, man. The way these guys operate, and so many people are asking you what's going on with that team and everything else. And that's Edmonton Oilers fans who should understand it as much as anybody. But no, we're the kind of the laughing stock of the league right now, to be honest.
Pretty much as we try to connect once again here with Matt Stajan. Can you hear us, Matt?
I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. We got you, my man.
Holy.
We got you. What's this reunion like to see Rosie's face again?
Oh, it's good. It's good. I brings me back, makes me feel young because he came in hot to Toronto when he got called up in the late 2000s there. But it's great to see him. He doesn't change. You look the same.
I don't know. It's all fancy camera work, Stage. We
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on though, but we wanted to go back a little bit. I mean, we talk salary cap things all the time, and this team's been up against the cap by what was like $44 at one point in time, and it's such a different beast trying to run a team with the salary cap. And you actually came in the era that didn't have a salary cap. It was the Wild West. You were free to sign whoever you wanted. Did you understand the difference when that changed back in that '04 era, and what the repercussions of that were going to be?
At the time, I didn't because I was just a young guy coming up. One thing I noticed was the Leafs very rarely had young guys come in because they could just pay to bring in veterans and free agents because there was no cap. And at that point, Pat Quinn loved his veteran teams. So when I came on the scene, I was fortunate to um, come in playing well, and Pat seemed to like me, and I was one of the younger players that probably he ever probably coached that wasn't like a Pavel Bure or someone like that back in his day. But so I was a young guy, and my first year we brought in like Joe Newendike came in. We traded for Brian Leach at the deadline. It was quite the team to be on. I actually got to room with Joe Newendike my whole first year as a roommate. So it was crazy, and it was a lot of fun. And then from there, the lockout happened. So I missed a whole year. Actually, it was probably a good thing I went and played in St. John's. But the year after the lockout, all of a sudden our salary, our cap was set at 39 million. So it was a big cut from the team we had before. We lost Brian Leach because the year went by, and then you couldn't keep Roberts and Neuendijk, and so it changed quickly. And then that's when you saw teams starting to go young and figure out the whole cap system.
Well, when I look at that roster, man, I mean, I'll go like it's gonna take a while here, but Matt Sundin, Brian McCabe, Joe Neuendijk, Gary Roberts, Owen Nolan, Darcy Tucker, Nick Antropov, Thomas Cavalier, Robert Reichel, Alexander McGillney, Ponikarovsky, Matt Stajan, Michael Renberg, Brian Leach, Ron Francis, Ed Belfour. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, for a young guy to come into that organization and have that much veteran leadership around, like, how good was that for you to look around and see how guys operated in that league?
Oh, it was unbelievable, and not just like talking to them, like they kind of treated me like their little brother, and I was lucky to stay around. It seemed like every time I was about to get sent down to St. John's, someone got hurt, or it just kind of worked out where I stayed. So I only did end up getting sent down for a week. I didn't play any games, but I got sent down to St. John's at the trade deadline because we brought in Ron Francis and a couple other veteran pieces. So it was cool. I played a lot with Owen Nolan that year. We had some chemistry. He unfortunately blew his knee out, tore his MCL late in the season, so we missed him for the playoffs. But it was honestly, I sat in the room, didn't say much, but I just watched. Like that, like you learn so much from watching. And I feel like the generation today, the young guys come up, they're pretty they they they're just younger, and they've always had everything at their fingertips, and they come in thinking that they're going to get the whole world handed to them. So they're a lot more comfortable, and it's a younger league. But when I came in, I barely said a word. But those guys took care of me, like Brian McCabe, Darcy Tucker, Ty Domi, all those guys, Matt's. Like I couldn't ask for a better group, and to learn from, and kind of propelled my career to take on a leadership role as I played, on some teams that went through some rebuilds, and I was able to kind of be that guy that could help the young guys along.
Yeah, Stage. I was gonna say, like, what the fuck are these guys watching now? Are they watching the puck bunny in the third row? Because they ain't watching the leadership core. Because they brought in O'Reilly, they brought in Shen. Nothing seems to work. They brought in Patty Marleau, Joe Thornton. What's your assessment? Because Jay and I have just had a meltdown today in the last couple shows because this team, like, again, and maybe we're lucky to watch you guys play in the early 2000s where it was just like hard nosed hockey. It was different hockey. But what's been your assessment of the Maple Leafs so far this year?
Well, their offense is elite. Like they're paying, their whatever you guys call it, the core four. They're making a lot of money, and they're elite. Like all those guys can put the puck in the net. But let's be honest, to win in the National Hockey League, you need four lines rolling. You need to ride some D. You need a horse back there that's defensively sound, that can shut down the other team's best. And I you look at well, you just look at Edmonton, like they're kind of in the same boat, but who did they bring in last year at the deadline? It's made such a difference from Nashville,
Ekholm,
um,
yeah.
Ekholm, and that made such a difference for them last year. And just a guy that could eat minutes and play against the other team's best players. I don't really see the Leafs having it. They have players that can play, but they're also puck moving D, and I just don't that who's really tough to play against on the Leafs back end. Like if you're
Benoit, yeah.
like game in, game out in a playoff series. So they have to make some changes, and I think this little streak where they keep blowing leads kind of brings light to that. And I think Tree Living will have to exhaust all options here.
You mentioned your era, obviously playing for Pat Quinn, and we've had a lot of conversations the last little while, and we could just speculate. I mean, we're not in that room, we're not there with the head coach on a daily basis, but what kind of comfort level did it bring having a guy like Pat Quinn behind you guys?
Well, he was just like he was such a player's coach. He was hard. He held guys accountable. I'd say, he just had your back, and maybe his X's and O's and that stuff. The players kind of had to do a lot of talking and figure that stuff out. But he just had your back and made sure that you were going. He was a good motivator and he was a presence. Like I think having a presence back there goes a long way, and especially maybe more so in that era because you look at that team. There's like 7 or 8 Hall of Famers. You need to have a coach that those guys respect, and even in today's game, if you have a coach that guys can respect and trust, and but that has to go through the locker room. You have to have players. Your top players got to be respectful, but also have to be respected. Like that's a huge thing in a dressing room, and I think if you can bring it all together, something special can happen, and you see it. Something just clicked last year with Florida. Like I think just it came together. They just seem bonded, and we say it every year about the teams that have success, but it's honestly like the league is so tight, and that's sometimes the difference is just that chemistry in the room and appreciation for each other.
I'm sure you've played on some teams stage where they change the coach mid-season, and you alluded to the fact that the players and the structure of the team probably isn't perfect, but we saw it with the Oilers going through problems. I think they liked Jay Woodcroft. They didn't want to unload him, but as soon as they did, a total culture change within the team. Have you seen that in your career where, I mean, I know you change a coach, it's a big change within a team. Do you think that could help the Maple Leafs? And what's your experience with that happening mid-season?
Actually, I've never played for a coach that got fired
Really?
mid-season. Surprisingly, I played a long time in a lot of teams that went through tough patches and rebuilds. I've had multiple GMs fired mid-season, which is also a pretty big deal. But coach always off-season. Lots of coaches, but they always got unloaded in the off-season. But it is a change. It's a change of philosophy, and it's just it's like a reset, and it sucks to be a coach. And I've done a little bit of coaching now since I retired, but like in the league, like you can't just make trades and reset things. Like a coach, for the guys who are struggling, it brings in fresh life. And I've seen it from season to season where I struggled under Brent Sutter at the end of his time here in Calgary, and we brought in Bob Hartley, and it was like a fresh start, and you kind of make the most of it as a player. And the same thing with the GM. It's a fresh start. You whenever there's a change as a player, you're like, okay, I got a chance here to change some minds, and fresh look at me. So I just think it seems to work all the time when a coach gets changed. Minnesota went on a heater when they changed their coach. But I think that's when you're an elite team, that might change for a little bit, but you gotta. There's something more to it than just going on a 10-game win streak after a coaching change. It's what happens 20, 30 games in, because will you fall back into the place that you were.
January 31st, 2010. What do you remember about that day? Of course, the big Dion Phaneuf trade. You get traded from Toronto to Calgary. What do you remember about that day?
Off day and Sunday in Toronto, and just got a call at breakfast. I was eating breakfast Sunday with my wife, or my fiance at the time, and we had lost the night before to Vancouver. I remember that we lost in a shootout or an overtime or something. Yeah, and just got a phone call and be like, "You got traded to Calgary, and you're not alone. We can't tell you who." And 5 hours later, you're on an airplane to a new city, which I still call home now. We love it here in Calgary, and yeah, it changes your life. But it came out of nowhere, to tell you the truth. I was becoming a UFA at the end of that year, so I knew maybe at the deadline I'd get moved if they didn't want to keep me. And I kind of knew like Tyler Bozak was coming on the scene, Grabowski was there, so I was having a really good season. So I was like, the way things are going, they're gonna offload probably any assets they have. They did to Nick Antropov the year before too, and traded him. So I was like, probably get traded, but I didn't expect it, a month before the deadline. So it was a shock, and I think anybody who's been traded midseason would say the same thing. It's a life-changing experience.
To this day, we still miss you in these parts, Stage. But certainly, I mean, it's been fun to document. What have you been up to the last little while?
Yeah, so the last 2 seasons I was coaching. I was assistant coach with the Calgary Hitmen, so the WHL team out here, and really enjoyed it. This year, though, I took a step back. It's a lot of travel. Coaching is a commitment, and I got a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I want to make sure I'm around at these prime years of their life, because you only get so many of those years, and I want to coach them and help them. So I'm just more part-time this year with the Hitmen. I'm their skills and development coach is the name tag they gave me. So I don't have to travel with them, but I head to the Saddle Dome and practice with them when they're home, and head to home games when I can. So it's been nice. And yeah, I did a little bit of media through the COVID time, and for the Flames games, I did some intermissions. So I've kind of dipped my toe everywhere, and just kind of feeling my way like every retired hockey player does.
Well, great to see that face, and thank you so much for doing this today, man.
Yeah, anytime, guys. We'll get the technical difficulties a little better next time. So
It's been a day. Thanks for coming, Stage. Good to
all
see you,
right,
man, and good
see you,
luck with
Rosie.
everything.
Yeah,
Say hi to the family.
yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys. See you, Rosie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's always fun, like seeing you see your former teammates, man. Especially doing this venture. I don't think you would ever suspect that this would have happened like 5 years ago, where you had a chance to like rekindle with some of your former teammates, right?
Yeah, it's hard to stay in touch with guys. I mean,
Yeah,
everyone's got their different things going on post hockey that you don't have that commonality anymore, that you're doing things. Everyone gets busy. Like he says, he's got
yeah,
different jobs and testing out waters and different walks of life, and then you got the kids going on. I mean, I barely see my own friends that I live with in town here, because I'm at the hockey rink 24/7 with two boys, coaching them and doing this and other gigs on the side. It becomes difficult, but to see guys from the past is awesome. And I think you can tell from that interview, that is Matt Stajan. He is rock steady, head on his shoulders. There's no wavering about him. He's just solid as can be. And I think that that calm, cool head on his shoulders is a big reason he played 1,000 games in the NHL.
All right, let's wrap this shit show. It's been that type of day here on Leafs Won't He Take. The Betano wrap-up is presented by Betano.ca. The game starts now, 18 plus. Please play responsibly. My bet tonight, dude, I'm feeling it. I went on my fantasy podcast yesterday. I said fucking safe bet, free money. Like, I just look like the biggest turd bag. And then yesterday, when I'm pre-gaming with Boardsy there, with Aaron Bordato, our former producer, and I bet him. I bet Yaremchuk. It was a tough night. But let's get back to it. I like New Jersey in regulation against Montreal tonight. Anything you're looking at?
I haven't looked. No, I haven't recovered from last night, to be honest. I took the Leafs money line too, but I also took the over in the first period, and I took a tie as well, which always pays big money. It looked like we were headed there, but of course they couldn't hold on the last 3 minutes to get it to overtime. Frustrating left, right, and center. I got to say, I'm surprised you went that hard on the Leafs when they're struggling against a red hot Edmonton Oilers team. I like the faith, and I just want to say that I know we're being pretty negative these days with the Leafs. And I know I started this gig trying to look at the positives, not be part of the problem with the media in the market. But yeah, I don't think you're doing a service by blowing smoke. And I mean, when these guys are hot and when they're playing well and winning games, we're all over them and dissecting why and how can we get better and what are the consistencies going to lead to, and that type of thing. But right now, I mean, you have to call a spade a spade. I don't want to be one of those negative people in this market space of the Toronto Maple Leafs, people that follow and cover them, but you got to call a spade a spade. And I mean, it's been negative town, but I mean, it has been since, those few games after Christmas, and we're gonna call it like we see it, Nick. And if people don't like that, there's probably things you can look at that are a little more positive. I just don't think they're truthful. We try to be honest and call it like it is on here. And right now, it's pretty dark days in the Maple Leafs territory. So hopefully, sunnier days ahead. But we're gonna keep calling it like we see it, aren't we?
Yeah, we're realists. And again, if you don't like the content, then go fucking listen to another podcast. I don't know what to tell you, but I think from day one, we've been realists, man. I've been taking heat in this market for like 10, 12 years. People saying I hate, love the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's not true. I mean, I think you call a spade a spade. It's been crystal clear for years. This team is not good enough. They don't have it in them. They need a systemic change. I'm not the only one saying this. I mean, you've watched this team for a year and a half really, really in-depthly. You've been saying the same thing now the last little while. I'm not the only person out there. And again, I don't mean that as a jackass. I mean that as if you don't like our content, our podcast, don't listen to it. It's pretty plain and simple. Like I was reading on social yesterday, somebody was bitching about another fellow podcaster in the Toronto market. It's like, you don't want to listen? Don't fucking listen. We're not begging you to listen, right? I mean, we're just calling it how it is, and I think that's what people like about our candidness and our bluntness. So it is what it is. I just wanted to apologize for the constant beeping. We tried our best to get that out of the show today, but alarm testing in my building. I mean, you're a guy who's got a background in that, and it just hasn't gone away for like 3 days, and they're doing some work. So thank you for bearing with us. Thank you to Matt Stajan, producer Vic. Outstanding job with the technical issues on today's podcast. We made it through, Rosie. So this is a first ever coming up for the Thursday edition of Leafs Morning Take. Neither me or Jay Rosehill is going to be on the podcast. We have Carter Hutton and Anthony Stewart tomorrow, right?
That'll be interesting. We're going up north to Jasper to be in that pond hockey tournament. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got Leafs Morning Take partnering up with the Daily Face-Off and teammates for this pond hockey tournament. I'm interested to see what this thing's going to be like, but you're going to be traveling. I'm going to be busy at work, and we're going to leave the reins to someone else, which is very scary because, my goodness, it's very clear we got a really good hold on things today.
The boys got it. I should add, too, that fucker Ryan Pinder from Flames Nation. I told him I want to go him off the draw. I don't know if you've seen the schedule. Friday night, 6 Mountain Time, I guess. We're taking on Flames Nation in the first game. And me and Pinder have been going at it about the Blue Jays, another fucking fraud organization ran by frauds. And he's a believer in the Jays. I'm not a believer in that team. I think they're trash, ran by trash people. And I told Pinder I want to go him off the opening draw. So we'll see if he answers the bell on Friday.
I can already see me having to come in and clean up your messes. So this is going to be an interesting weekend.
He's my boy. Me and Pins are boys. I'm fucking kidding. I'm trying to be a laugher because that's what you did your entire career, most of it, right? I mean, you set a tone. I want to set a tone for the boys this weekend.
You said it. I don't mind coming in, batting cleanup, man. You go do your thing out there.
Rosie's our goal scorer. I think you're going to snipe. I think you're going to dominate. So looking forward to that. Next time Rosie and I will talk, will be on Friday. We're going to do our show in our regular time slot on Friday. And hopefully it's recapping a Maple Leafs victory because the last couple shows have taken a lot out of me, Rosie. So great job. I know you're playing under the weather, and we'll talk on Friday, okay?
You bet. Looking forward to some positivity the rest of the week. Let's go.
I don't know about that. At the Leafs Nation 401, many thanks once again to producer Vic, Matt Stajan. For Jay Rosehill, I'm Nick Alberga. Take care. Bye. See ya. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews. We got clips. We got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much.